Hey everybody, it's Jon Meyers from Write Better Together. Look everybody, it's Emily Brooks.
Hello, Jon Meyers.
We interrupt this, whatever you're watching, for a commercial. A commercial? That sounds like the way I started the last commercial.
Well, is this the same commercial?
No, I know. So I was watching the internet, Emily, and
We're
on
watching the internet.
Yes. And on the internet, I learned that we were writing a book and that we were only a third of the way done.
We are.
And it didn't have a subtitle. And like the book's done already. And it has a subtitle. So what's going on with our book, Emily?
So our book, you probably already know about it, is called Write Anyway.
Oh, yes.
Colon.
Oh, there's our colon again. That's so gross when you say colon in the middle of it.
Giving yourself permission to keep writing no matter what.
Yes, and it does. Good or bad, life happens. They're going to have it pretty soon.
Yeah, and covering everything. We're going to have a cover reveal. Then you get to hold it in your hands.
Yes.
If you buy the physical copy.
And if you come to Oklahoma City, it'll be your first opportunity to get us to autograph it for you.
Yeah. Have we mentioned that we're going to be at a writing conference in Oklahoma City, August 30th through September 2nd?
Teaching a master class.
So keep an eye out because it'll be there soon. It'll be in the world.
Out of its bubble. Our book is coming out of its bubble.
We'll have a new segment every week. Book, how did you get out of your bubble?
Welcome everybody to Write Better Together. I'm Jon Meyers. Hey, look everybody, it's Emily Brooks.
Hello, Jon Meyers.
And Winny? Is Winny there too? Last week there was an imaginary friend, Iki. Today we have a real friend, Winny.
A real friend.
What are we talking about today?
Well, if you've been listening to us for a while, you know that we've been preparing you for this episode for some time because today is our conversation with screenwriter Paul Guay.
Oh my goodness, he wrote the Little Rascals.
Oh my goodness. We have such a good conversation with him talking about screenwriting and comedy and behind the scenes stuff. It's great.
30th anniversary of the Little Rascals is going to be next week, so that's why we did the episode now.
Yes. So before that, we're going to have some listener interaction. Winnie's leaving us. Bye, Winnie.
Winnie's had enough of this show.
I'm ready. We also have quite the list. Before our talk with Paul Guay, we have listener responses. Paul Guay is going to give you a call to action.
A good one.
A really good one. Then we're going to have our HeyJonMeyers segment where I teach Jon Meyers something. And then we're going to have the final act where we play a silly game.
Yes, with the biggest prize ever.
Ooh, I'm excited. But first, how did you get out of your bubble?
So, I'm going to practice for the game. I'm training you for the game during the how did you get out of your bubble talk. The game will involve multiple choice.
Okay.
There's more to it than this. So I was on my stupid walk, #stupid which now needs to be rebranded as #is too darn hot to go for a walk because it's been 100 degrees for the last 2 weeks. So on my stupid hot walk, I saw something that we've talked about in a previous episode. I saw another occurrence, another instance of something that we have previously discussed. Was it a new community library?
Okay.
Or a new lemonade stand?
That was going to be my first guess.
Or a new muffler man?
Oh my goodness. These are all great.
Or a new mystery girl?
Oh my goodness.
Which one was it? It's only one.
I'm going to guess, because it's stupid hot, lemonade stand.
I hope you're better at it than when we play the game, because it was not. It was I saw a new community library.
Oh, wow.
Not only did I see I'll put a picture of it right here. right there in the picture. Not only was it a new one, it was branded. It had a name on the side. I can't remember. Bless you. I can't remember. My pastor does that. Like church of 2,000 people, well, it seats 1,400. Someone like in the very back will sneeze. You're just in the middle of everything. I was like, bless you.
My phone's ringing.
We can take calls.
Spencer, welcome to the panel.
Hey, Spencer, welcome to Write Better Together.
I'll call him back later. It's okay.
So, it's branded on the side. It's the White Squirrel Library District, which is obviously a fake library district. And then, so I'm like, what are the odds of this? So then I'm like, did the other one have a brand on it? Because it didn't, because I have a picture of it and it doesn't, right? Guess
Mine
what?
does.
Well, guess what? The old one that we showed in a previous episode has a new sign. It's Cottage Ponder. Or I said that backwards. I'm tired. It's Ponder Cottage. and so it got a name. And yours has a name too?
It's not a name, but it's like set up by the bicycle. I can't say it. Bicyclers.
We'll be back after our nap.
Yeah.
For the rest of this episode. So yours is sponsored.
I don't really know exactly what it is, but there's a picture of people riding bikes with books.
These are just people in their own front yard, so it's not an organization or anything. I wonder if Ponder Cottage saw the other one and like, oh, they got a name. We need to put a name on ours.
Yeah.
And then Ponder Cottage, they also got a spotlight on it. So now at night it's lit up with with its own spotlight. So so before you tell me how you got out of the bubble, I have to make a correction. So in a previous episode, I went on and on and on and on and on and on about how Ferris Bueller's Parade was in the Dyngus Day. It was actually the Dyngus Day Parade. I know. And I've been meaning to correct this because everything I said was true, except that it's the Pulaski Day Parade. So the school's out on Pulaski Day. John F. Kennedy announced that year that he was running for president on Pulaski Day. It was in Pulaski Day Parade in South Bend. The whole thing is, everything I said is true, except it was on Pulaski Day, which is March 3rd, which is the same time of the year as Dyngus Day. So remind me on Pulaski Day to talk about it some more.
Okay.
And then
we'll have Emily Brooks.
And then the other thing I was going to point out is in a previous episode that we talked about how we got our first rejection from Jack Handey. Guess who else got rejected by Jack Handey?
Who?
David Spade and Dana Carvey. And they've had every writer on their podcast from SNL except for Jack Handey. And they're like, well, we're working on it. And they're like, he always just says, I'm fine. I'm good.
Yeah.
We're good. So that's kind of like, he wasn't rude when he rejected us. He was nice. I got a book. And
I mean, I think we've talked about like saying no can be healthy for people. So sometimes you have to be the one who says no, and that's fine.
I'm just trying to put us on the same plane, podcasting level as Dana Carvey and David Spade. All right. How'd you get out of the bubble?
Well, I got out of my bubble by having my sister and my nieces and nephew over to watch the Little Rascals.
Oh, how appropriate.
We had a party. We had popcorn and M&Ms.
And pickles.
You know, that would have been a great idea, but we didn't think of that at the time. But they left singing the songs about pickles and the one about him having an ugly face, and they loved it. They gave it a thumbs up. So that was a lot of fun.
They got out of their bubble, the kids.
You're right. I was at home. I did get out in other times, but that was the story that I wanted to tell, was having them over. And sadly, my brother-in-law, he was like, I'm going to come and then you can talk about me on the podcast. And then he wasn't able to come.
What is he? What's his name and what does he do for a living?
David, and he's a software engineer. There you go, David. Hi.
All right, there you go. Check that off the list.
We've talked about Bethany so many times. I guess he got jealous. So speaking of the Little Rascals.
Yes.
Here's our interview. No. No. Do listener responses.
This is my favorite part of the show, is when we mess up.
When we forget what we're doing. We need to just make
you're doing the viewer responses, and you're going to tell us about the self-promo Monday. But here's why it's my favorite part, listeners, is because it's so real. And like Kelly Clarkson does it, Spade and Carvey do it. I watched a 45-minute episode with them, and the first 20 minutes of them they were adjusting their cameras, and John Lovett's making faces to the camera. And so it's just real, and because we're all real, and our listeners are real, and our viewers are real, and we're having a community. We're not like, it's a community of real people.
Well, there are times that we cut them, but it's only because of time, because we don't want you to have a 2-hour episode to listen to. So,
and it's usually not even, but that's true. But we don't cut stuff. We cut pauses and when the camera blacks out.
Or I get a phone call.
Or you get a phone call with Spencer.
Yeah.
which is now staying in because I've mentioned him 3 times.
Now we've talked about it. Now it has to stay in. Anyway, we have listener responses.
Many of them.
So if you don't know, if you're not following us on Facebook or jumping on there, we have so many ways that you can interact with us. And one of those is Self-Promo Monday, where you can tell us about things you're working on. It could be related to your writing, but sometimes we have, like, I put my sister's business on there one day. So you can do that too. And we had some just awesome ones recently. And I'm just going to name some of them. Ashley Hargrove mentioned her film, Can You Feel Me Now?, which is a comedy about 3 women trying to call up their deceased husbands that would rather stay far, far away from them.
The founders and staff of Write Better Together cannot. What did I write?
What did you? It said, the views of Ashley Hargrove and the dead husbands are not the views of Write Better Together or members of our staff, living or dead.
Yes. I'm underscoring that for our viewers at home. Continue.
It's so funny. Fiona Ross shared that she updated her portfolio, so you can go to that at scriptrevolution.com/profiles/Fiona
Future guest. Future
we'll
guest.
put link in show notes, yeah. Betsey Kulakoski mentioned that book 7 of the Veritas Codex is now available for pre-order. Again, all of this we'll put in the show notes. But again, if you follow us on Facebook, you can see all of these things, all these writers who are doing awesome things and celebrating their work.
Yep. That's great.
Yeah. We
There's
love
many more than that, and we want even more. Like, and if you're one of the people that we mentioned, you can do it every week after week after week. Misty's got a book out. Studio of Misty L. Butler. Check it out.
Yes, check that out.
All right.
Now we have our interview with Paul Guay.
Yay.
And my dog is trying to escape, so I'm going to open the door for her. She didn't want to
Winny, you have to stay for the interview. Welcome back to Write Better Together. You already know I'm Jon Meyers. Hey, look, everybody, you already know it's Emily Brooks.
Hello. And look, everybody, it's Paul Guay.
Oh, my goodness.
Hey, look, everybody, it is I.
Hey, Paul Guay.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about Paul Guay, Emily.
I thought you said you were going to do that part.
Oh. Paul, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm about 5'7". I think that's the most important thing to know about me. But the last time I went to the doctor and I was measured, he said I was 5'6", and I looked at him indignantly and I protested. And then later on, I saw his notes from the meeting, and he said something like, "Patient got violent when he learned that he'd lost an inch of height." So this is troubling to me, and I think this is something that your viewers need to take into consideration. Never go to the doctor expecting to come back taller than you went in.
That's good advice. And dude, we're the exact same. I was 5'7" and now I'm 5'6".
There you go.
Do you change that on your license?
I
have not changed mine on my license yet.
I'm going to keep lying. I think a full glorious 5'7" is what a true man should be. And I think at 5'6", we're in Paul Williams territory.
There you go. What's your shoe size? You weren't expecting that question.
Listen, there are women on this call. I cannot tell you my shoe size. I think like a number 2 elephant.
Okay, there you go. Fair enough. I'm going to set the table, and then I will give you our first question. So the way I understand that the young Paul Guay got the job to write the Little Rascals was that you and your partner were called in for a pitch. Penelope Spheeris, the director, did not like the pitch. You were sent on your merry way. She brought in her own people. And then Universal or Amblin, one of the two, they weren't happy with it. So you got to pitch a second time. They were happy with it. But the first question I have, and then you can tell us how much time you had left once you got the job. But the first question I have for you is, how did you get that first meeting? When I know it was your fourth agent, but no one like you. There wasn't this giant track history like Penelope had Wayne's World. Right. There wasn't like, how did you get in the room in the first place?
We like bribery and blackmail. We think it's a good career path approach. Now, we had written a number of screenplays. We had written our first spec screenplay, and that got us our first agent. We wrote and we got some meetings from that. We wrote our second spec screenplay, and we got a new agent, and that one went all over town and got some good reactions from people. It was a comedy drama. And we wrote our third spec, and that one sold to Universal. And we were told that Michael J. Fox was interested. It was on the fast track for Michael J. Fox. This is 1990, still on the fast track for Michael. Any day now, Michael J. is going to say, Paul, I have been sitting on this piece of genius for years. It's time to pull the trigger. And then we'd taken other meetings on other projects. So we weren't entirely unknown at that point. So we're called in. I want to correct just one thing you said, because otherwise it was gospel truth. Okay. You said that Penelope didn't like our pitch. We actually don't know. We just know that she told us afterwards that she had hired these other writers that she had worked with before. So she could have hated it. She could have loved it, but preferred the other writers or anything in between.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So when when we're up for the pitch, my partner had watched The Little Rascals as a kid, the Our Gang short subjects that Hal Roach had done in the 20s, 30s, 40s, or whatever. I had not. I was a Three Stooges guy because I know where true genius lies in the comedy world.
Oh no!
I'm a high tech person, as you guys know. So I go to my VHS store and I get some VHS tapes of The Little Rascals. And I'm watching them. I'm going, this alfalfa kid is really talented. This guy's really funny. And I like his relationship with Spanky. And as you guys probably know, there's various iterations of the Rascals over the years. There's different combinations. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, this will be fun. These are characters that would be fun to write for. So we do the second pitch and we get hired. And then I forgot your question. I'm sorry.
Well, you answered the question, but you can continue with the story. How you got in the room. So you told us how you got in the room.
Right.
Now you're going to tell us how much time you had to write it.
Yeah. So typically, this was 1993. So back then, the typical amount of time that you're given for a screenplay is 12 weeks for the first draft. So we asked how long we had, and it turned out that Amblin or King's World or whoever had the rights to the characters, the rights were about to expire. So they needed to make a decision. Are we going to renew the rights or are we going to take a walk? And the question of whether or not to renew the rights depended, we were told, on our screenplay. So if we do it right, there's going to be a film. And if we don't, they're going to tar us, feather us, and send us out of town looking ugly and an inch shorter than when we walked in, Jon Meyers. So we had 12 days. We have 12 days to write the script. So they give us an office right next to Penelope's on the Universal lot, which I think is the only time we ever were on a lot other than pitching. And she's in the next room. She's doing pre-production in case the project goes forward. And my partner and I are meeting 9 to 6, 5 days a week for 12 days, basically turning out pages. And so it's roughly 10 pages a day that we were doing because the first draft, I think, was 102 pages. It's fewer than 10, but whatever. And at the end of every day, we give Penelope the pages, leave them on her desk. And when we come in the morning, we get her reactions to the pages. Now, Penelope is a woman who will share her viewpoint. She's not a shy woman. And to her credit, she's very clear on what she likes and what she doesn't like. So if she doesn't like something, the S word for crap will be written across the script. And if she does like something, there's like a check mark or whatever. And we asked her, what are your criteria for what you like and don't like? She said, if it makes me laugh, it's in the movie. Going, wow, that's simple. And it's so unpolitical compared to most directors or people in the business that you deal with. She either likes it or she doesn't like it. And there's no arguing, there's no time, we move forward. So then we start doing the writing. And we have a number of executives who are coming in and talking to us and giving us their vision of the Little Rascals. And I'm thinking, I'm so interested in your vision of Little Rascals. We have 12 days to write an entire script. Could you get out of the office? But you can't say that because every one of them is higher on the food chain than we are. So you're listening as if every opinion mattered. And of course, their opinions disagree with each other. And some notes that you get are great. Some notes you get aren't so great. And you're doing the usual political thing of take everything you can or all the suggestions that will help the script, try to ignore the ones that will ruin the script and that conflict with the higher ups or whatever. So that was the basic process of the writing. And again, it went very fast because there was no option.
I'm assuming at this point, because you hadn't met Mel Brooks yet, you didn't know his method of just agree and say yes to the studio notes and then do whatever you want anyway.
I love that. I love hearing that from Mel Brooks. I would love to have the cojones to do that myself. There was apparently after the screening of Blazing Saddles, he got notes from the studio and he said something like, we showed it to you as a courtesy because we are professional collaborators. Do not mistake our courtesy for being interested in the opinions of primeval whatever. Like, I love that. I love how professional he is in the first part of that note. So yes, whatever the question was, the answer is yes.
So since we're on the Mel Brooks, tell your Mel Brooks story, and then you also are crack researchers before this episode filmed. You told us that there was something cut. That was set up and then it was cut. So tell us the whole story.
Okay, so Mel Brooks is one of my heroes. I remember Blazing Saddles was one of the first R-rated films I ever saw. And I walked in a few minutes late when Harvey Korman is talking to the camera, breaking the fourth wall. And that was the first time I'd ever seen the fourth wall broken in a movie. Obviously, it's not the first time it was ever done, first time I ever saw it. And I thought the film was absolutely hilarious. So Young Frankenstein comes out. I love that too. And then I go back and I see the producers and I see the 12 chairs and I'm a huge fan. So when I find out that Penelope has gotten Mel to agree to like I know him, to agree to do a cameo as the loan officer, I'm overjoyed. So there's just two minor wrinkles. One is that Penelope, who is about to direct a comedy writer, director, legend, and is very aware of the fact that Mel is a comedy legend. And she's a bit nervous about having him on the set because she thinks, what if he doesn't take her direction? What if he wants to direct it? So she was not in the calmest of moods that day. And we were out on the set that day, and I, like an idiot, did not at any point go up and introduce myself to Mel Brooks. Not that he would have cared, but I would have cared. I wish I had done it, but I was trying to be professional and be a writer, which means be silent. Nobody ever wants to hear from the writer unless he's typing. But for me, it was just a blast that I got to indirectly work with Mel Brooks. Years later in Santa Monica, I was at a screening of one of his films and he was there. And I came up to him afterwards and I said, you were in one of my movies and your wife was in another of my movies. And he said, which ones? And I said, you had a role in Little Rascals as the loan officer, and your wife, Anne Bancroft, had a role in Heartbreakers as a con artist. And he says something like, oh yeah. So that's my conversation with Mel Brooks. So wow. Cool.
Mel, if you're watching,
I'm sure it's the most memorable.
Paul needs a second conversation with you.
That's right. In terms of scenes that are cut, as probably everybody watching knows, you write stuff, and some of it, even if all of it is filmed, not all of it is going to wind up in the film. Our screenplay, at least one of the drafts, was 102 pages, something like that, 107 pages, and the film itself, I think, is 82 minutes, which means there's roughly 25 minutes worth of footage that either wasn't shot or was shot and was cut. And there are many reasons for that. Pace is usually the key reason, especially in a children's movie and a comedy. So in the Little Rascals, the Rascals go to the loan officer for a loan, and Mr. Brooks, oddly enough, is rude to them. I don't know who writes that dialogue, but he was mean to them. And they leave without getting the loan. In the script that we wrote, they come back and he gets his comeuppance. I forget what they did, but they do something to him, because in the Rascals world, the kids should always win. The adults should not have anything more than a temporary advantage over them. So when we saw the film, we're thinking, oh, I wish that had been in the final film. There's another thing, which is at the end of Act 2, when Spanky and Alfalfa have their big emotional breakup and they're sitting at their separate houses and everything. We had written a slightly longer version of that scene, and we saw 2 rough cuts of the film. Penelope was kind enough to show us, and in at least one, maybe both of the rough cuts, I don't remember, the scene had been filmed as we had written it, and it was really actually moving. When Alfalfa and Spanky do their makeup, when the film was released, part of that had been cut. I can't tell you what had been cut because I don't remember. But then, I thought it was not as effective. When I watched it again 2 days ago to prepare for the podcast, I didn't notice anything missing, and I thought it actually worked. I thought it actually was kind of emotional, kind of moving. So who knows? Maybe I overreacted because I'm a diva.
And the years in between, because I was getting ready to say that, so I'm glad that you watched it 2 days ago. Because, I mean, I watched it probably 60 times. I was trying to actually figure out, every time I got a new girlfriend with kids that had never seen it, then it was required. And then once they watch it 10 times.
Oh, that's
right?
great.
And so that's interesting.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just rewatched it with my nieces and nephew, and it was their first time. So it's always fun to see kids' first reaction to it, especially like I grew up with it. We watched it over and over and over again.
Oh, cool. It's delightful to hear that, because unlike theater, where theoretically you have people clapping while you're performing or at the end of your performance, unless people say things like that in film, you just don't know. And it's really cool.
It's the rewatch. Yeah. It maintained something that it maintained value that we would rewatch it and show it to our kids. And
I'm pleased to hear that. When I saw it 2 nights ago, I was thinking Penelope caught a lot of behavior that the kids were doing that was like really natural, unscripted, just kid stuff. And I was thinking, this is so much fun, just seeing how awkward and weird kids are. They move bizarrely. I mean, watching Spanky, it's like he's never walked in a straight line. There's things going on all the time. And that's a real blast to watch. Kids just being kids. And I was also thinking, this is so obvious, but it's a kids movie that is all about kids, and the adults are so peripheral in the movie. It's almost like Bugsy Malone. It's almost all kids all the time, which gives it a really weird feeling. I don't know. I mean, aside from, I guess, Home Alone, there's not a ton of movies like that, for better or for worse.
Yeah. And when you're really little, because I saw this when I was really little, those kids were older than me.
Yeah.
And so I was looking up to these teeny tiny little kids,
right,
which is just a weird thing to look back on now. But that was significant, the fact that they had so much autonomy in this little world.
This leads to the next area, because Paul just rewatched it for the first time in over 20 years, and it's the 30th anniversary. So when you watched it with the little kids, did you each laugh at different things? Did the little kids and you laugh at the same things? Or were you laughing at different things? And then Paul, did you laugh at different things now at the current age than you did 30 years ago? There you go.
That's a great question. So I was sitting next to my sister, and we grew up with it together. And so we were laughing at the things that were like, oh yeah, that was the scene that we would rewind and watch over and over again. But then we also did notice laughing at new things that, like, oh, that was kind of an adult joke thrown in there that we didn't know before. Or, oh, I didn't know that was Mel Brooks, like, when I was a little kid, and recognizing all of the cameos. And then, I think the kids definitely fall for more of the slapstick humor, and like the very first scene with the fishing and their hooks get snagged, like that was the kind of stuff that got them rolling.
Yeah. I actually don't remember what I laughed at 30 years ago,
Okay.
unfortunately. But there were a number of times 2 nights ago where I was laughing. Since it's been 30 years, I didn't remember everything that happened in the film. The bit when Alfalfa's on the cliff and he's about to fall off, and then he does, like, once I see it, it's like, oh, of course. But if you'd asked me to tell you the story of the movie, that would never have come into it. I had no memory of it. So there's a little bit of surprise and stuff there. Also, there are a couple of, I think, improvised bits, like the nickel for a pickle, that we did not write, that I've always enjoyed. It's like, that's just so fun. Who comes up with, I'll give you a nickel for a pickle? I mean, who does that? And that silly song that one or two of the characters sing at some point, is like, where is that coming from? It's not coming from the script. And that's great, because I don't know if Penelope came up with it or the kids spontaneously or some combination, but it feels like kids who are not constrained by the screenplay or by the frame. It's like we're capturing them in the middle of their little 3 or 4 or 5 or 6-year-old lives. I thought it was pretty fun. You didn't ask this, but I'm going to just bring this up. So I'm looking up on IMDb for reader reviews of the film right after I just rewatched it. So I'm interested in what people have to say. And the ratings go from 1 out of 10 to 10 out of 10. And it's interesting for me to read what everybody says. The one thing that caught my eye particularly, and this was from an adult, obviously, was the adult was saying, what a misogynistic film. How can you possibly teach films that teach kids that women are less than men? I'm thinking, did you watch the movie?
Oh, no.
The point is that the boys shouldn't be doing that to the girls, and that the girls prove their point, and that the boys welcome them in. So it's like, have people lost context? If you put a bad guy in a movie, do they think the writers are saying, do what the bad guy says? This is not a pro-Waldo movie. It's like, pay attention to the context. Anyway.
That comment says more about the commenter than it does the
right.
content or the text that they're talking about.
Yeah.
You teach, and Emily and I both teach as well. And so, and no matter what generation, we teach 19-year-olds, 18-year-olds. What age do you teach, Paul?
Undergrad and grad. So it goes from probably 19-ish to, I've had at least one gentleman in his 60s. I've had some in their 40s, but it's usually 30s and mid to late 20s, I would say.
We have, people think we don't have the same sensibilities, and unless you're living in a cave somewhere, you have the same sensibilities as a 19-year-old, and they inspire us as much as we inspire them. There's not there. Okay, so I have this theory, because you had mentioned pacing, and then so I'll use Petey for an example, and then you can work the pacing into this. Did your nieces and nephews, did they laugh at Petey? Emily?
Remind me, which one is Petey?
The dog.
Oh, the dog. Oh, they laughed so hard at the dog. Like, when the dog gets into the car, anytime that happened, they were cracking up.
Okay, Paul, your response to Petey.
All right, so I have a problem with animal reaction shots in movies. To me, it's the most obvious and worst, lowest type of humor imaginable. So I'm looking all over this film, which I am partially responsible for, and I'm seeing 82 reaction shots of Petey. It's like, kill the dog. Please, anything. Don't have the dog react again. Cut to the monkey. I want to see Elmer before I want to see Petey. I want to see reflections of the cameramen before I want to see Petey again.
Okay, so I'm tying all this together with the generational similarities. I believe no matter what your age, that comedy goes on a pendulum back and forth. And so there's sitcom-y punchline comedy, and then there's reaction comedy. And then, so kids right now that shouldn't be watching Curb Your Enthusiasm are laughing hilariously at it, because that's reaction comedy, but it's also Jack Benny's reaction comedy. It's less punchline. There aren't punchlines on Curb. It's just situations and Larry David overreacting and making giant reactions like Petey does. And so kids will laugh at Petey, but someone that laughs at Friends or at Married with Children, they were on from the pendulum when it was sitcom punchline, punchline, punchline. And it just goes back and forth like that from the 20s to the 30s to the 40s. And so those of us that teach 19-year-olds, we have a benefit because we can see that pendulum is swung back and forth. If you were writing, because I happen to be writing something for children right now, 9 to 12-year-olds, if you were writing, how do you let that affect your pacing, knowing that the 9 to 12-year-old, they're gonna laugh, Skibbity Toilet is hilarious to them because it's reactionary. It's Petey, it's Larry David, and so how do you have the pacing cover both ends of the pendulum, or forget one end, or what do you do?
It's hard for me to answer because I don't really think in those terms. If I'm writing a comedy, I'm trying to set up a situation in which characters are behaving as they would, but in a way that's going to come out funny. So it's not that I have a problem with jokes. It's that the jokes are sort of, in a sense, peripheral to what I'm doing. It's the behavior that's funny. Do you want to talk about Danny Simon for a moment? Because this is a segue to Danny Simon.
Yeah.
Okay. So for those of your viewers who may not know, Danny Simon was the older brother of Neil Simon. And if you don't know him, he was the most commercially successful playwright of the 1960s, 70s, and maybe 80s in the United States. He wrote The Odd Couple. He wrote just tons of plays that were turned into movies, The Sunshine Boys, tons of them. Very, very successful. So at some point in the 1980s, Danny Simon was a comedy writer, the older brother of Neil. They had worked together with Sid Caesar on one or more of Sid Caesar's shows, and there was a guy named Woody Allen who was also on the writing team, so not a bad writing team. And after Neil went off to become a playwright and was no longer working in TV, and after Woody Allen went off to become one of my favorite filmmakers of all time, they both said variations of the following about Danny Simon. Woody said something like, "Everything I know about comedy, I've learned from Danny Simon." And Neil, the younger brother of Danny, said something very similar. Danny talked about the class that I took with Danny. We were doing sketch writing, and we would come up with a premise for a sketch, come up with the characters who are in the sketch, and then we would kind of riff lines. The thing that I learned from Danny was that you never violate the reality of the situation for a joke. No matter how funny the joke is, the characters have to behave as the characters actually would behave. Otherwise, you're breaking your agreement with the audience. You're basically saying, don't take the situation seriously. Don't take the characters seriously. Just wait for the next joke. Now, if you're Zucker, Abrahams, and Zucker, you might be able to pull that off. But if you're not, if you're almost anybody else who ever lived, you've got to have a story that people care about, and you've got to have characters that people care about. And obviously, to whatever extent that's true in a sketch, it's way more true in a feature film where you've got to sustain 90 to 120 minutes or whatever. So Danny's approach to comedy was that good comedy has all the requirements of drama, plus it has to be funny. So it has to have theme, it has to have character arc, it has to have people you care about, it's got to have stakes, protagonist, antagonist, and it has to be funny. So when Woody Allen talks about he doesn't really respect comedy as much as drama because he thinks that comedians are sitting at the children's table, I feel the exact opposite. I feel that if you can pull off a comedy, you've done what a dramatist does, and you've made it funny in addition. Funny to me doesn't necessarily mean silly. I mean, it can be. It could be slapstick, it could be silly or whatever. But you can tell truth in comedy at least as easily and as powerfully as you can in drama. So for me, the division is, I think people misunderstand, even some of the practitioners, like Woody Allen, who's way better than I will ever be, misunderstand the importance of what it is that they're doing. When they do it well, I think that's to be cherished. It's difficult to make 500 strangers in a movie theater laugh at the same time on purpose, not because of a mistake that you've made. And that's a good thing when you achieve that. And I think people who do that should be happy about doing that and proud of doing it.
I love that so much. It reminds me lots of conversations we had in my poetry class in grad school, because there's a similar conversation that poetry has to be serious. And so we had lots of conversations about how humor in poetry unlocks a whole other range of emotions. And I just love this whole idea that drama, or that comedy has to include that all of the same things as drama. It's hard. I've tried writing comedy in my stories because I like stories that have comedy best.
Yeah.
All my favorite stories have some element of comedy, and it is hard to do.
To me, it's sad that somebody would say that an entire art form such as poetry should only be serious. Like, why?
Yeah.
Who passes these laws down? What do we want to do when we're writing? We want to move people. We want to communicate something when we want to move people. We want to make life worth living. We want to help people see things they might not have seen before or re-experience things they haven't thought about in many years. We want to make the imaginary vivid. We want to create new worlds for people. What says that has to be done with a straight face or all the time with a straight face? Why can't you do it in a multitude of ways? And in the same work, why can't you be both funny and serious? Why is it either or? Why isn't it and? He says profoundly.
Very profoundly. The so don't violate the rules of the situation.
Right.
In the story, don't if it's a children's story, don't let the adults win. The children always win.
Right.
What are some of those other parameters? I don't want to call them rules.
Yeah. So one thing that he talked about was he would say Danny Simon would ask the class what would happen next in the scene, and people would come up with a big laugh line or a big plot thing, and he made a gesture which was a woman putting makeup on her eyebrow, and he said it's a step at a time. You go from one step to the next step to the next step. Semi-related to that, when I started teaching screenwriting, I realized that most of my students had begun their screenplays without outlining, and they were kind of making it up as they were going along. And for me, that's the biggest mistake. If I had to point to one mistake, that's the biggest you could possibly make. It's what would this person actually do in this circumstance? So for me, you come up with a premise, and then you spend days and days and days and days brainstorming, because you want the story to live up to the promise of the premise. You want a person who goes to the movie to get everything that they expect from that premise and much more, things that they would never think of because you spent weeks thinking of all those other things. I have friends with whom I exchange screenplays when we want to give each other notes. And sometimes I'll read something with a great premise. And while I'm reading the screenplay, I'm going, boy, I hope this happens. I hope this happens. I hope this happens. By the end of it, none of that has happened. And it's not that I'm a genius and they're fools. It's that I am obsessive about spending time brainstorming on paper before I start pulling it together into a screenplay. I want to make sure that every key possibility that I've explored and I go, that doesn't work, or that's a good idea, but it's for another movie, or yes, that works. I don't want the first idea to be what I type, because usually the first idea is on the surface of my mind because it's the obvious and cliche idea. So unlike improv, where first impulse is called the best impulse, in actual writing, to me, it may be great. It may have occurred to you, and that's the best idea. But often there's a better joke. There's more truth in the character. There's a more interesting thing that the person could do if you just spend the time going, what if? What if this happens? What if he does this? What if the person is betrayed by that? And that was prompted by Danny Simon basically saying, what would the person logically do next?
Yeah.
All right. I was waiting for Emily to ask her question, but I will butt in.
I'm still thinking
because I'm uncomfortable with awkward silence, even though we live in it. So this was a Universal. There's a history of Universal monsters that have something to do with the intersection in the Venn diagram of your story. Tell us about this.
Okay, so I grew up a huge fan of Frankenstein, Dracula, the Wolfman, the Mummy, the Creature from the Black Lagoon, the Invisible Man, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Phantom of the Opera. Most of those are Universal horror films. People like Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff are my heroes. So my partner and I are writing this script called The Little Rascals at Universal. And it occurs to me Universal owns the right to all these characters and to all the makeups of those characters. And I said, what if Alfalfa has a nightmare? And I forget where in the movie this was happening, but I pitched a nightmare in which he was going to have to battle either Frankenstein's monster or the Wolfman or whatever. And I said, we can actually do it. We can actually do it here. So I wrote the scene with my partner's blessing, and we turned it into Penelope. And she said the saddest words I've ever heard from an adult woman. Kids won't know who these characters are. And it broke my heart. I think she's wrong. That's a separate point. But so we couldn't do it. We couldn't do the scene. And I also pitched a version of Psycho, because Psycho was a Universal picture as well, in which Alfalfa is taking a shower and we're doing a riff on the... And there was a different reason we couldn't do that. I forget what it was. But I would have been so happy to see Alfalfa versus the Wolfman. Who doesn't want to see that?
So in the sequel that you didn't get to do, would that have been the sequel, the Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein, or like the Little Rascals meet Frankenstein?
I wish. So the sequel is a semi-interesting story. So contractually, since they made our script for the first film, we had the first rights of refusal on the sequel, basically. So the film comes out and it gets bad reviews and makes a lot of money, which is always a fun combination. And they're deciding that they're going to do a sequel. And we hear that they're approaching other writers. And we're going, I'm sorry, have you guys read the contract that you wrote and that we signed that says you have to come to us first? And they said, we just wanted to check out other dance partners. And we said, you check out as many dance partners as you want, honey, but you're coming to us to write the script. So they realized, we're bound by our own legal department? Okay, you guys can write the script. So we wrote the script, and unfortunately, they didn't make a film. And I think there was a sequel that went direct to DVD like 5 years ago, or I don't know if it's a sequel or if it just involves the Rascals, but I haven't seen it. But
so it was 10 years later. It was Little Rascals Save the Day, and so it's no one other than Petey. No one's. I mean, they're the same characters, but it's all different people because it's 10 years later.
Right.
It's all different actors, and it might even be a different Petey. I don't know, but
yeah. Sadly, it probably would be. Yeah. So that was the story. We wrote the sequel. We thought it was amusing. I think we structured it as a mystery, although I'm not positive at this point. I forget what they were solving, but I'm sure it would have been entertaining, but it didn't happen.
That would be. That would be a great mystery with them.
By the way, for your viewers who don't know, most screenplays that are written never get filmed. So that's just something you have to know. Even if you're in the business, you hear about very, very famous writers, and they always have a trunk load of scripts that they love, that are passion projects or whatever, but that never saw the light of day.
Tell us your why you just went to Vegas.
I've never danced anywhere in the vicinity of a pole before, and I thought it would be amusing. No, I had a film. So there's a film.
You mean the North Pole where the real Santa Claus lives, right?
That's of course what I mean.
What you're talking about.
I can't think of an alternative explanation. So there's an Anthem film festival in which I wrote and directed 3 shorts within the past couple of years. And last year, one of them was selected by the Anthem Film Festival, and it wound up winning their best comedy short, which I was very pleased about, delighted. So this year, they accepted another of the 3 films, and it was in competition there. So my wife and I drove out to Vegas. And by the way, when we left Los Angeles, it was 75 degrees. When we arrived in Vegas, it was 121. So that was a bit of a change. Thank God we brought underwear. So I was there watching the comedy films, and it was part of a thing called Freedom Fest, where a bunch of libertarian types get together and discuss money and leave me alone, and that was fun.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Emily, I've never seen Emily just where she's totally speechless. What would you say was the crowning moment for the nieces and nephews? Like, what was the epitome of the Little Rascals for them?
Again, I think the fishing scene got them.
That's so great.
The "You Have an Ugly Face" song.
That's right.
And I think for all of us, actually, the Mel Brooks scene really got us, and especially when he says, and I'm going to get this wrong, but if we were your children, we'd punish ourselves.
We stole
that line.
Yeah, we stole that joke, I have to say. I love
so good. And then Alfalfa running around in his underwear. Classic.
It's so embarrassing when you think about that. I mean, I don't know about you, but the ultimate boy's terror is being naked in class or having just your underwear on in class. And for him, it's worse. I mean, he goes in the swimming pool and then bad things happen in the swimming pool.
But in that one scene, I actually had to Google when did to see if Risky Business had come out first, because in that one scene where Alfalfa comes out and then he does the Risky Business move before he takes off in his underwear, and I'm like, was Risky Business already out then? And it was.
Yeah.
And then when you were talking about Universal, like when Alfalfa did have the dream, though not the one that you wanted him to have, but and he falls off the cliff, that seemed like a very Universal monstery dream of where he's falling.
Imagine if he'd fallen into the arms of the creature from the Black Lagoon, John. This movie would have been a critical triumph.
Those bad reviews would have never happened at that point.
That's right.
Let's talk about that while Emily's thinking of the final question.
Okay.
And then what do you think about the phenomenon? Because a bad review back then didn't travel the same way that a bad review travels today.
Yeah.
A bad review travels today can kill a great movie within 24 hours. Back then, it took a while, and it didn't kill a great movie. That was a huge hit.
Yeah, well, you're very kind to call it a great movie. So I think, yeah, definitely there's the reviews are more ubiquitous today. Anybody can instantly find out reviews of a film. I don't think that would have hurt us, though, because I don't think this was ever going to be a critic's film. Not that I would have been disappointed if they'd liked it, but this was something that kids are going to like or they're not going to like. And the parents are going to go, this is going to be fun to watch with my kids the first 80 times, and then I'll sit them in front of the TV for the next 80, and I don't have to hear the lines again, or not. It either succeeds there or doesn't. Again, I would love it if we got 41 Oscars, but we didn't expect it. We're thinking, what makes us laugh? What would have made us laugh as kids was basically it within the world of the Little Rascals. So I looked at the Rotten Tomato reviews as well because I wanted to depress myself. And I think the critics were like 21% positive and audiences were like 73. And that's a big mismatch, but not totally unexpected. I think we were held to the standard of, is this exactly the same as the 1920s, 30s, 40s Little Rascals? And the answer is, of course not. It can't be. I think the question is, on its own, if you didn't grow up 60 years ago and watch Little Rascals, would you enjoy this? And I think the answer is largely yes.
It does. I agree. It does have the Hal Roach vibe to it. But it's in 1994, and so I mean it's the perfect mesh of that. But some of the things were what you were talking about with the kids' reactions and everything. That's totally the same as the original ones.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Emily, final question. Not to put any pressure on you.
I feel like this is so generic, but if you could, and getting into the screenwriting business has drastically changed, I feel like, but what advice would you give to writers, particularly who are pursuing comedy?
This is like a 2-hour question, but you don't want a 2-hour answer. So, I mean, there's a couple things. One is when I broke into the business, it was extremely hard, and it's become much harder to break into the business since then. There's no question. There's an economic contraction that's going on in the business. From what I read and hear, streaming has lost multiple billions of dollars for the streamers. They were chasing market share as opposed to return on investment and profitability. They don't know what they're doing. They would spend $200 to $300 million on a project, and it didn't matter because they were just trying to bring in subscribers. And that model seems not to have worked. Until very recently, the Marvel model was perhaps the most successful in the history of film. That model's currently not working. It might work again, but right now it's not working. I enjoyed the most recent Raiders of the Lost Ark. It lost money. I enjoyed the latest Tom Cruise Mission Impossible movie. It lost money. If you had told me going in after the Mission Impossible movie, which I thought was one of the best action movies I'd seen in many years, I enjoyed it immensely. If you told me that was going to lose money, I'd go, what is wrong with you? There's no way.
Yeah.
I mean, there's overspending going on. There's COVID delayed things that made everything else more expensive. But for whatever reason, the business is as skittish as it's ever been during my lifetime, probably more skittish. So what I'm constantly hearing, again, I don't know this for a fact. This is what I hear. If you're a first-time writer, don't be writing the billion-dollar projects. Be writing something that's 5 million or less, probably, that's relatively contained in terms of location, sets, things like that. Not 1,000 actors. Probably, if you can, look for something that's high concept, where the idea itself grabs people's interest and makes them go, I want to read your screenplay. Again, very briefly, there's something like 100,000 screenplays written in the United States every single year. And there's something like 700-ish movies made. Many of those are not made by first-time writers, like the vast majority are not. So that means that your chances of selling a script, as opposed to having a great calling card, which is a fantastic thing for a script to do, the chances of selling a script are very small. So then it becomes a question of, if I want to sell a script, how do I maximize my chances? So it's not that you should chase trends. It's not that you should do another zombie movie, but you should have an idea of the business. You should know what, in general, are people interested in, what aren't they? There are some genres that are cyclical. For example, from silent movies, from the days of silent movies until the 60s and early 70s, Westerns were one of the key mainstays of film. Then Westerns went away for a while. And then I'd say in 1992 with Unforgiven, it's now possible to do a Western or a neo-Western. Horror, on the other hand, has been around since, you could argue 1931, you could argue 1920s, 1910s or whatever. I think it's always going to be around. And one of the advantages of that genre is you can do high concept. You don't necessarily need a star. You can have one or two locations or whatever. This isn't to say young writers that they have to write horror. It should say that it means that they should have their eyes open as to the realities of the business if they want to sell. If they don't want to sell, then this conversation doesn't apply to them. So I would be looking for, even though everything is hard to sell, what are people looking for? You guys mentioned a Venn diagram earlier. I actually, for my students, I have a Venn diagram of 3 circles. When they're choosing what to write about, circle number 1 is, what do I love? Because why would you waste your time on God's green earth writing something that you don't love, that you're not committed to? Do something else, find another idea. Circle number 2 is similar to 1, but it's not identical. What can I pull off? What can I execute really well? For example, I love science fiction. I love it. But I'm not nearly as good a science fiction writer as I hope I am a comedy writer. So if I have 2 competing ideas, one is science fiction and one is comedy, I'm pretty confident I can execute the comedy well. I'm not as confident I can execute the science fiction, so that's not going to be my first choice. Circle number 3 is, even given that almost nobody is buying anything, some people are buying some things. What are they looking for? Read the trades, read the internet, go to groups like Screenwriter or the Inside Pitch or whatever. See what people are looking for, get an idea. And then my idea, the idea I choose for my next project, has to be in the intersection of those 3 circles. I've got to love it. I've got to be able to execute it. I've got to know that there's a possibility that somebody's going to want to read it. And in terms of possibility, I'm looking for one of 2 things. One is commercial potential. Is there a movie here that can make people beaucoup bucks? Basically, people in the business want to do one of 3 things. One is they want to make a lot of money for themselves and their bosses. 2 is they want to win a lot of awards or be nominated for a lot of awards for them or for themselves or their bosses. And or they want to be with the hip people, the cool people, the people with a new voice, a different voice, people doing something different from everybody else. So I encourage my students to think in terms of differentiator. What is your differentiator? What differentiates you from every other writer? What differentiates your script from every other script out there, conceptually and in terms of execution? If you write a movie that is clearly a script that's never going to make $500 million, but it's different from everybody else's artistically or tonally or character-wise or voice-wise, that's a good calling card. You want people to read the script and go, we're never going to make this movie, but I want to talk to you. What else are you working on? If I flatter myself that if David Lynch had been in my class at the beginning of his career and had brought in Eraserhead, I think I would have said two things. One, this isn't going to make a penny. Two, I want to meet this guy because nobody else thinks like this. Or Tim Burton or Quentin Tarantino. I wanted to see, you're doing something different or better than everybody else. I need to meet you. So that's what I'm looking to do. If I'm writing my first script, I want people to want to meet me and want to talk with me. And it's fantastic if they want to make my film. But that's almost certainly not going to happen with my first script. That almost never happens with the first script. So what am I looking for? I want to establish a relationship with somebody in the business. I want to write a comedy so good that when they don't make mine, but they have another comedy in development and they need help, they go, let's call Paul Guay and see what he has to do. Let's give him a chance to pitch. Or we need a comedy. We don't have one on our slate. Let's have him in to pitch 5 ideas and see if any of them aren't awful. That's the kind of thing I want to do with my scripts. I want to get noticed. And that means that I need to be networking. I should probably be working in the business to maximize my chances of meeting people and learning about the business. I should be curious about film. I should know every successful film in my genre, every critically acclaimed film and every commercial smash film in my genre. I shouldn't be the guy who's pitching a zombie movie who's never heard of Night of the Living Dead, which has happened to me twice. I should be the expert on my genre and the expert on my screenplay. And I should be personable. I should be somebody that people want to work with, because if they hire me, they're going to be stuck with me, either in a room or in a Zoom for months and months and months. And they're going to have to want to give me bad news, give me notes. How do I react to notes? How professional am I? Can they introduce me to their boss without losing their job? Am I injecting heroin in my eyeballs while I'm talking? Or can I be relied upon to show up on time, drug-free, ready to work? It's those kinds of things that I think people need to do. And again, I want to emphasize, be curious. Don't be the person. I had one student, I said, what genres do you love? And he said, science fiction. I said, me too. What are your favorite science fiction films? He said, Star Wars. I said, big fan, although I prefer Empire Strikes Back. What else? That was it. There were no other science fiction films he could name. And this was somebody who was at a film school who wanted to be a professional writing science fiction. Don't be that guy. Be the person who names science fiction films I've never heard of and makes me want to go look them up after I've met with him. Be the expert. Be somebody that somebody wants to talk to. Somebody who has interesting ideas and opinions that aren't based on a YouTube video, that are based on actually knowing the field. And here's another one. Go to movies. I have some students who don't go to movies. I have a lot of students who hadn't read screenplays before my class. So we have a 14-week class. They're required to read at least 7 screenplays during the 14 weeks and then watch 7 movies or whatever. But a lot of screenwriters don't read screenplays. They seem to think that they're born fully formed from Zeus's brow, and that they, instead of lowering the drawbridge and letting new information and ideas in, they pull up the drawbridge, they drop the portcullis, and it's like, I know what I'm doing. It's like, okay, great. Then I won't waste my time helping you.
Well,
you thought that was a generic question, Emily, and we got
advice,
gold from it.
Like, I was looking around for a piece of paper because I was like, I need to write this down.
I wrote it all down.
Watch it. That's so good. Thank you so much. So, do you have a call to action for our listeners?
Are we talking about listeners who are writers or want to be writers, or which kind of listeners are we talking about?
Yeah. Mostly people who want to be writers.
So the first thing is do it. Don't tell people you're going to do it without doing it. It's so easy to talk about writing as opposed to writing. There are so many distractions that people have. I mean, ever since Al Gore invented the internet, I would rather research the Beatles than I would actually do any writing because it's more fun. At the beginning of my career, I had a writing partner. So we would meet 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, which is perfect in terms of discipline, because whether you want to or not, whether you're in a good mood or not, whether you feel, quote, inspired or not, you're going to show up and you're going to write 20 hours a week. So if you don't have that, and most people don't, I would find a responsibility buddy or a kick in the butt buddy or whatever, whether it's on a daily basis or weekly basis. I would check in, and you have to be honest with each other. What did you plan to do this week? What did you actually do this week? Find a way to commit yourself to putting your butt in the chair for whether it's a certain number of hours a day or pages a day or words per day or per week. It's a hobby until you take it seriously, and it will go nowhere as a hobby. It will only work, and I'm talking about screenwriting specifically. adapt this to poetry and everything else, it's slightly different, obviously. But almost nobody sells the first screenplay. And from what I've read in various sites, the average for a person who does sell is the 7th screenplay. Know that you're in this for the long haul. Have a very thick skin. Be very open to comments from everybody. And anything that you think will improve your script, do it. Anything you think won't improve your script, don't do it unless somebody's paying you for it. And then even if they're paying you for it, if it's going to ruin the script, try to find a way not to do that note, to talk them out of the note, because you don't want to ruin your script, because the blame's going to go to you, even if the note is theirs. So you've got to take it seriously, which means you have to put time aside for it, which means you can't be doing 7 other things. You can't be multitasking. You can't be having fun with your friends or whatever. You have to actually be, in essence, alone in a room writing. And if that sounds like a good thing for you, like it did for Isaac Asimov, whose one goal in life was to die face down on his typewriter, and he almost did it, then fantastic. And if that makes you shudder, you definitely shouldn't be a writer. There's probably a billion other things you can do in life, but writing won't be one of them.
Great.
Excellent.
That was a great answer. And how do they get that to us, Emily?
Yeah, so listeners, let us know how you're doing these things. If you're getting an accountability buddy, or how are you making sure that you spend time writing every day? And you can give us those comments on our Facebook page at Write Better Together Now. You can respond to this episode in our show notes at writebettertogether.com/podcast. Or anywhere that you've found us on this episode on social media.
There you go. Thank you so much, Paul. That was
Thank
amazing.
You.
This has been really fun. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, this was so much fun and so insightful. So we really, really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks
for making me watch my movie again, too.
Yeah, sure. That was amazing. And right?
Oh, it was so good. I learned so much, and it was funny. It was insightful.
And he's right. So there's all in the screenwriting community, there's varying opinions on different things, but his not like he's right he's right on his numbers. He said there's 700 films, there's 10,000 or 100,000 films written last year, 80,000 registered with the WGA, right? And then 20,000 not registered. So he's right on the money with that. He said 700 films were made last. I actually looked it up. It was 660. He's right on the money with that. Like everything he knows, he knows that he knows that he knows. He's right on the money. And that's important to know. There's a valuable learning lesson there, is to know the industry you want to get into.
Well, I think being a teacher makes a big difference too. When you're teaching a subject, it keeps you fresh. I had a student ask me once, why do people study something and then become teachers? And I'm like, well, sometimes it's because that's like how you maintain, like that's how you stay in the field. Like you are continually learning about it.
Yeah, sometimes it's a fallback, but you can tell us what yours is. But in my case, like it never occurred to me until Kat Candler came to the school, director Kat Candler, and said you can be a writer and a teacher at the same time. And I was like, oh, that's great. And then once I started, like the first second I got up in front of a class, and just like teaching a master class like we're going to do in Oklahoma City and stuff, first second that I got up in front of everybody, it just felt like I was at home. And they the people in the audience, the customer, the students, they inspired me more than I inspire them.
Yeah, and then some fields are just academic. This is me like wishing I had this answer for that student, but like some subjects are academic in nature, and so being in the university is like essential for continuing your studies. I don't know where I was going with that, but
well, I think I don't want to put words in your mouth. I think that I've seen you, because there was this gap of 20 years right into you, but I've seen you be 1,000 times more comfortable in front of a room of people. Like you spoke in front of a theater.
Yeah, even if I didn't become a teacher, that experience in grad school was monumental for me. just socially and confidence.
Because when you were 8 years old, you were not like that. And I was 8 years old and 2 months. I was 2 months older than you, even then when we were 8 and didn't know each other.
I thought you were 2 months younger than me.
Oh, I said that backwards. You're right.
Right,
You're right. Emily's
November.
older than I am.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Good thing we don't cut and edit things out like that mistake. All right. What's
hey, Jon
next?
Meyers.
Hi, what?
So the reason why I had Winny in here and then she abandoned me. Do you know anything about shih tzus?
I don't. No, I don't.
I found an article called Dynasty Dogs, the Royal History of the Shih Tzu. So shih tzus are originally from Tibet. It says they were often bred by monks and then given to royalty. So they were commonly given to Chinese royalty. And you see this a lot with various species. I think King Charles Cavalier has a similar thing where the royalty basically would use them to keep their feet warm. They would have them at the foot of their beds or just at the foot of their chairs or thrones or whatever they're sitting, to keep them warm because their hair just grows continually. Like it's not like a Sheltie or a Collie where the hair it reaches a certain length and it's done.
It will keep
growing, which is why Winnie has to get haircuts every few months. The other thing that I love is, so they are, while the origins are a little iffy, they do have tapestries in China that date back 2,000 years. So they are one of the oldest dog breeds. And Shih Tzu means little lion.
Winnie.
Or lion dog.
I can't believe she left the room while we're talking about her so much.
I know, it's so rude.
Winnie is a little lion.
But I have a picture of a Shih Tzu tapestry that I will put on the screen.
Just like you, to bring in thread and
you're right.
something woven. Now you're going to tell us there's a secret language woven into this tapestry.
So if you, like me, love Shih Tzus for their calm temperament, their coziness, some of the issues,
their foot warming capabilities.
We actually like to put our feet under Winnie and tell her to do her job. They have issues with their eyes, so kind of like other dogs, like pugs that have really bulgy eyes. They have so many issues. We have to give her eye drops. She has breathing issues because her face is mushed in. So they're actually not a very healthy breed. But there are breeders, like where we got her from, that are, and she wasn't bred this way. This dog was bred by somebody else. But the person who gave us her is a breeder who is specifically trying to breed healthier Shih Tzus. So my sister-in-law, Lizzie, has one that the eyes aren't buggy, the nose is a little longer, and so it's healthier. So I think it's neat that there are some people who are trying to increase the health of these breeds that have traditionally been unhealthy.
You went all the way to Tibet, just like Mo and Kayla went to go get their sweaters to Ireland. You went all the way to Tibet to get Winnie. And your sister got a more healthy version locally.
I'm suspicious that they were healthier before and that we've just with inbreeding, they've just continually gotten worse. And so she's trying to make them healthier.
I'm sorry. We can't talk about inbreeding on this show. Good grief. What kind of show do you think this is?
Oh, if you want to learn more about inbreeding, make sure to subscribe to our show wherever you're listening and give us a review. Tell us that you love us. Share us with your friends and interact on social media and respond to our calls to action so that we will share that on the podcast.
All the things.
That means it's time for the final act.
Goodbye. Today's game, Emily, I cannot be in the camera for today's game, is the $1 million honey drop. Because we don't legally have the right, we don't have the rights to do $1 million money drops, so I had to change the name. So this bear has nothing to do with anything in the episode. And you will be playing for, guess what? $1 million honey drop. You're playing for $1 million.
Oh my gosh.
I actually have 100 $10,000 bills.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
That's what this is. There's your $10,000 bill. Do you know who that is? On the $10,000 bill?
I don't.
That is Salmon Chase. Salmon Chase. Do you know who Salmon Chase was?
No.
He was Abraham Lincoln's Treasury Secretary.
Oh, okay.
I think he was also a Supreme Court justice. He's not the one that put his own face on the money. These were made from the 20s, 30s, and 40s, and they were pulled out of circulation in 1969. And now I have all of them because they're pulled out of circulation. So I have all. So 100 times 10,000 is $1 million. This would be more fun if you were holding this, but I don't have a way for you to hold it. Most games start with you winning $1 million. This is already yours. It's yours. All right. It's yours right now. $1 million.
Wow.
However, there's a catch. You have to risk it because we don't gamble on this show. You have to risk a portion of it based on, remember that thing we did during the beginning of the show where you had to answer the little cards?
Yes.
All right. You have to answer 4 questions.
Okay.
And then each question will get will get a little bit harder. So the first question is, on a previous episode, they're all based on a previous episode. We talked about the 3 caballeros.
Yes.
Panchito Pistoles. Salutis Chakalaka. Jose Carioca. And Donald Duck.
Okay.
One of these is not one of the 3 caballeros. Now, you have to leave one of these empty, and you tell me where normally you would be handling the $1 million. You tell me where you want to put on, if you're confident on the answer of which one it is, then you would put the whole $1 million on there because you know it's going to be a right answer. If you're not confident, you might want to split it up. I'm
pretty confident about this one.
All right, so you think you know which one it is. So tell me what you want to do with this $1 million.
I am 90% confident.
Yes.
That it's Saludes Chakalaka.
I think it's not Chakalaka. All right, so are you 100% confident you want the whole $1 million to go there? Or do you want to hedge your bet? Or not bet because we don't gamble. Hedge your guess.
Let's put.
This is priming you for our episode on confidence and self-esteem. See if you put your money where your mouth is.
I'm so confident. Let's put all of it.
Okay. If you're wrong, the game's over.
What if I'm what if it actually kills my confidence because I'm so confident and then I end up being wrong?
And we have a previous episode that we'll fix you.
Okay.
All right, what do you want to do?
Put it all in.
I will tell you, first of all. Oh, wait, it's not supposed to fall in unless it's wrong. Okay, so pretend that didn't happen. It is not Donald Duck. We know that it is not Panchito Pistoles. And finally, is it Jose Carioca or is it Saludes Chakalaka?
You win!
Yeah.
You still have $1 million. Okay.
I didn't.
Good
lose
job.
any.
What were your clues?
I just watched the movie a couple weeks ago.
I know. That's why I told you this game would be easy.
A couple months ago, and then also there's one called Saludos Amigos. So I was like, I don't feel like Saludos is one of the names because that's Saludos. It makes me think of Saludos Amigos, which is different. We probably should tell the people that what you're doing is you're putting the money into 4 different buckets.
People listening to this in their cars have no idea what this last 5 minutes of the show is. All right, but they can play along with the guessing of the thing because I'm saying all the words. That was why I designed this.
Exactly. All right, I'm ready.
Have you heard of Brandon Sanderson?
Oh, who's that?
On a previous episode, virtually every episode, Emily has talked about Brandon Sanderson.
Yep.
Without Googling, she kept her whole $1 million in case you got out of your car and went inside Buc-ee's or something, and now you're back out. She still has the whole $1 million she's playing for. Was Brandon Sanderson born in 1973, 1975, no Googling, 1976, or 1979?
I could have told you that it was in the 70s.
I told you that it would get harder.
I know I've heard him talk about it because he has a podcast called Intentionally Blank where I'm pretty sure he's mentioned what year he was born. I feel my gut is telling me it's 75 or 76. If he was born in 1980, that would make him 44, correct?
Correct.
If he was born in 1970, that would make him 54.
Correct. I forgot. You have to leave one of these empty.
Oh,
I forgot to say that. Sorry.
Oh, no.
I failed at the game show host rule.
No, it's fine. I'm just scared now because I don't know the answer to this. I'm really trying to do the math.
You were going to split it up 4 ways?
Yeah.
Nope.
300,000 into 1976. Put another 300,000 in 1979.
1, 2, 3.
And then 400,000 in 1975.
That looks like a very not confident person. Pretty much a 3-way tie.
It was not 1973, so far correct. I do have money in the bank.
Oh.
Not 1979. Yay! 400,000, 1975.
I have never heard anyone lose $600,000 and say yay. I appreciate your positive attitude.
Well, I was either going to lose 400 or 300, and I lost the 300.
You are now down to $400,000. The next question has 3 answers. In a previous episode, you said, I wonder what clan Mo got his sweater from.
Oh, no.
This will teach you to say things on a podcast.
Oh, no. There's no way I can guess
According to Celtic Times, at the height of the clans, because they're unsure if there are any remaining clans and what the number is today. But at the height, no Googling, at the height of the number of clans, according to the Celtic Times,
it's Celtic.
Was that number, Celtic, according to Celtic, was it less than 240 clans?
Oh, no.
Exactly 240 clans. Or you guessed it, greater than 240 clans. Go with your gut. Don't do any math.
Go with the gut. All right, I'm going to put 200,000 in 240 and 200,000 in greater than 240.
So pretty even. You are very risk averse. This will come up in a future episode when we talk about confidence.
You didn't say this was like a psychology test. Okay, so I put my money in the right place.
Yes. So now you're down to $200,000.
So it wasn't less than 240.
If you had $200,000, what would you do with it, Emily? It's not enough to pay off for your house, apparently.
It would help pay off student loans.
There you go.
After tithing.
And my hand is approaching the buckets for people in their car at home.
Either way, it's 200,000. So.
And we'll be back with the answer right after this commercial.
We're here to interrupt this programming for a special announcement.
Yes, we are going to be at WriterCon this year in August 30th to September 2nd in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And we're going to be teaching a master class on September 2nd.
That master class is called Starting from Scratch, excuse me while I read this, Building Your Author Podcast from the Ground Up. This 3-hour interactive workshop will talk you through the considerations and concerns you'll need to address from developing your initial idea to getting your first episode on the air. So you go to writercon.com and then there's a registration button in the top right-hand corner. That's where you register for the whole conference and where you're going to get all this other stuff that we're going to tell you about.
Yes. And then while you're there, you can also see us in different places. So I'm going to be doing a session on writing your story to inspire others. So I'm also going to be on the poetry panel, the fantasy panel, the podcasting panel.
Running the podcasting panel.
Yeah.
And I will be speaking on using your networking to develop characters. Ellie and I are doing a one on podcasting together, and I'm doing a session on forming characters or considerations that you make when you form your characters so that they'll cross-platform well. So when you develop your IP, how to make your characters attractive to people that acquire IP.
Yep. So we're super excited and we hope you'll be there because it's also just going to be a great weekend of meeting other authors, meeting agents and editors and all kinds of people. So we hope you'll all be there.
And we're going to sign their books.
Yes, because we're going to have our book there.
We'll sign their book. I'll even spell your name wrong if you want me to.
And we're back. Emily has wagered half of her money. We don't gamble. Emily has risked half of her money on the exact number 240 and then greater than 240.
It is greater than 240.
Correct.
So I keep $200,000.
The final question. You thought I was going to say in a previous episode. I am not. In the current episode that you're in the middle of, we talked about a few of the characters in the Little Rascals with screenwriter Paul Guay.
Okay.
Which of these two pairs of characters have a bigger age gap?
Ooh.
Is it Alpha and Darla, or is it Froggy and Waldo?
Ooh.
$200,000, paying off the school loans. You have to risk it all. I'm curing your risk adversity.
Waldo is one of the bullies, correct?
Waldo is the rich kid.
Oh, Waldo's the rich kid. Right.
The bullies are Butch and Whaim.
Whaim.
Paul didn't mention this on the episode, but he's friends with Whaim on Facebook.
Nice. I'm going to go with Froggy and Waldo.
You're going to put it all on Froggy and Waldo, that they have the larger age gap.
Yes.
First of all, I'm going to put it there. The biggest age gap, is it between Alpha and Darla, Froggy or Waldo?
No!
There goes your school loan.
Oh,
I feel terrible. You lost, in the course of 4 hours, you lost $1 million.
$1 million.
The 4 hours it took us to play the game. Kind of don't get creeped out by this, but Alfalfa Bug Hall was 9 and Darla was 5 in that movie your kids were watching.
I can see that.
So now they're 39 and 35. That's not a big deal. Froggy and Waldo are now 39 and 37. So they were 9 and 7.
Oh man.
So there you go.
I mean, I was pretty torn between the two, honestly. I can see that now. Yep.
I said that backwards. Froggy was 37 and Waldo was 39, but you got the point. So I'm sorry, Emily, that you lost your $200,000. I have to come back on the show here for a second to say goodbye to everybody.
It was still a fun game. I loved it.
You lost $1 million. Easy come, easy go. But I can still give you the honey bear. That's your consolation prize. It sat here for no reason the entire time. There you go. Now it had a reason.
All right.
Honey bear, we couldn't
have done it
without
you.